Good evening, everyone. And welcome to this meeting of the Electoral Boundaries Commission. My name is Gerard Mitchell, and I'm the chair. My other members are at my immediate right, Lynn Murray, QC, and next to her, Libby Shaw. On my left is Kerry Carpenter and Elmer MacDonald. The function of the Commission, as most of you will probably know, is to review the boundaries of the Prince Edward Island's 27 electoral districts to see if they need any changes or adjustments. When the Commission does that, it's bound by the legislation to take into account a number of factors, including the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the population, the number of registered voters, municipal boundaries, public input, and any resolutions that the Legislative Assembly may pass, which they haven't done any so far for us to take into account, although that could still happen at the next sitting, I suppose. And we're permitted also to take into account any other considerations that the Commission feels are relevant. Our mandate requires us to hold public meetings across the province, such as this one, and this is, I think, somewhere around our 9th or 10th, and we have a few more to go. We have 6 months from the time of the establishment of the Commission to make a report, although there is provision in the Act to extend that by up to 3 months if necessary. We're hoping it won't be necessary. And the 6 months, I might say, would end on the 6th of June. But again, we hope to beat that mark too. Perhaps I'm being overly optimistic, but that's the goal. I have to say too that this time it's different. From other electoral boundaries commissions of the past, they weren't binding on the legislature. This time, the legislature is bound by the recommendations of the commission. They have to be adopted by resolution. So it's important for people to come forward and make their case to us in case we make changes that they're later not going to be happy with. And the other thing about it is that the boundaries that we establish are supposed to last through 3 election cycles. So that means we have to look at population trends, where there's growth and where there's decline. Those are factors that we would have to take into account. You will notice that the Commission has brought some maps with us that are over on the wall to my left. The one map is just shows the current districts. The other 2 are sample maps that were prepared by the Commission early on, and their purpose is just to engage discussion and conversation at meetings such as this. They're not maps that are adopted or even being proposed by the Commission. They're just to show what changes could look like, and the colored sections of them are the new boundary, sort of, and the heavy black overlay is what the boundaries were. So you can sort of see what adjustments were made. The final map could and probably will look quite different from either of those samples. Now, some changes are going to be necessary. Some districts are obviously too big and others are too small. We have 3 districts in the province that right now are over the 25% limit set out in the Electoral Boundaries Act. We have roughly 100,000 voters on Prince Edward Island that are on the registry right now. And if we divided that by 27, we'd come up with approximately 3,700 electors per district if all districts were evenly matched with electors. And that average is important because the Charter of Rights requires that prime importance be given to voter parity. And the court goes so far to say that any variance from voter parity must be justified on the basis that it provides better representation for the province as a whole. The Supreme Court, though, lets us know, too, that it's not just a numbers game. It's not simply a matter of arithmetic. There are countervailing factors that can, in particular cases, give good reason to depart from absolute or near parity. Things like community of interest, cultural language representation, the growth in an area, the decline in an area, community history, all of those types of factors are things that the Commission can and should take into account in assessing what the number of electors in a district is appropriate. I mean, there are geographical features too, but there aren't a lot of those on Prince Edward Island that make that dictate districts, or don't have any big mountain ranges or wide rivers. So that with that sort of bit of background, we're mainly here to hear from you, the people, about your concerns for your area of the province, and we'd like to hear from you now and invite you to take the microphone. Everything is being recorded for the public record, so when you go to the mic, just be sure to state your name, and we'll be glad to hear from you now. So whoever wishes to go first, please go ahead.
I'll go ahead and get it over with. There's 6 copies.
Thank you.
One for your records and one for each of you.
Thank you.
Lower this to a level that's appropriate for heights. Judge Mitchell, honorable members of the panel, thank you very much for coming this evening and for being in our area. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present my personal views on the matter before the Commission. But just prior to that, I would like to just do a little shout out for Ms. Murray and her recent nomination to the Bertha Wilson Honor Society, which is well deserved. I will only speak to the District 23 area and the proposed changes and its effects on the population of the communities it encompasses. As a resident of the village of Tyne Valley and a member of council, I believe that the present configuration of the district is a fair representation at this time of the communities of interest for residents. Residents of this area are typically gravitate towards the Summerside area for most services if they are not available in their own community. This present configuration of the district contains distinct communities of municipalities of Lot 11, Ellerslie Biddeford, Tyne Valley, Lot 16. As well, the native reserve of Lennox Island is part of this district. We also contain the communities of Wellington Centre, Richmond, Spring Hill, Mount Pleasant, McNeil's Mills, Poplar Grove, parts of Linklater, St. Elners, North St. Elners, Belmont Lot 16, Central Lot 16, Southwest Lot 16, Grand River, Arlington, Birch Hill, and Port Hill, and a number of others. While the Commission may not consider these as communities in the general sense, to those living in these communities, their identity is very important. As a council member of Tyne Valley, I spent considerable time in review of the newly adopted Municipal Governments Act. In all the consultation discussions, there was never agreement on what areas would or should be combined to represent a municipality within an agreed-upon number of residents of 4,000 or less. Over 4,000 represents towns or cities. I believe that this commission will find itself in the same quandary. Where to draw the lines based on your mandate, but keeping in mind the very important issues of communities of interest, municipal boundaries, population at present, and projected into the next 3 cycles of provincial elections, geographical features, etc. I would draw to your attention that as the French language population of the Evangeline region have made their position public on not wanting to be assimilated into the English language communities in order to protect their distinct society, the same could be said of the island's First People, the native community on reserve and off. The population of Lennox Island could be combined with the population of Scottsford and the registered natives off reserve to form one district at large to represent the population of the First Peoples on the island. As a tax-paying voting resident of Prince Edward Island, I believe that if this process continues as it is mandated within the 25% variance as the allowable, then the communities west of Summerside will see a reduction in the number of districts in order to justifiably recognize the overpopulation in urban districts. If the rural areas lose one in the west and one in the east in this round of the review, then given the present trend for a number of reasons of the population to locate to urban areas, then after the next review, the rural areas of this province will be faced with either further reductions in districts. If this commission is to make its recommendations by the mandated date of 6 months from appointment as a commission, then time is getting short to come to conclusions for approval of government. Should one of the recommendations be to have government allow for the distinct designation for the Evangeline region, then other allowable designations should be looked at, such as I have presented. The Commission could designate the whole of the rural areas as members at large, who would have responsibility for the whole of the rural areas. Where Prince County presently has 5 members, there could be 4 members at large to provide representation to the whole area. I wish you well in your deliberations and thank you for your time this evening. Lorraine Robinson.
Thank you. Do I have another presenter?
Thank you, and welcome to the community. Just want to give a shout out there to Mr. McDonald, as today Alvin Keenan.
Name?
Oh, Philip Brown. Alvin Keenan was chosen chair of the Canadian Horticulture Commission, and I believe you were the first Islander to be chair of that commission.
No, I was the second.
You were the second. I knew they were rare.
Yes.
So
Thank you, Philip.
he's in a distinguished crowd with you, Elmer. So thank you, and as I said, welcome. I'd like to start off by maybe just reiterating what you said, Mr. Mitchell, about the importance of what the commission decides. As you pointed out, the commission's, it's not a recommendation. What you conclude is not only binding on the people of Prince Edward Island and binding on the legislature of Prince Edward Island, but what you conclude, because it's the first time that the commission produces a binding report, your conclusions will set precedent for all future commissions down the road. Decisions that you make that may include exceptions around minorities or the application of a strict formulation on population will inherently be used as a reference point in any future commission. So your job is especially important. I do have some firsthand example of the previous commission's work because we were faced in the legislature with dealing with a report that pleased no one. Now, I don't ask Mr. Henderson and Ms. Vigor to have to face that, because I know firsthand, and even Rogerson knows firsthand, the difficulty of that when people tell you, but you can change it because you have to accept it and put it through the assembly. This time, it's the commission itself that will put a report before our elected representatives, and that will be the end of the discussion on it. Now, we're not going to debate tonight your job description, if you will, because it has been laid out. But what we see by commissions like the one that you are all members of is we see a rule of, we could say law, because as you pointed out, Mr. Mitchell, the Charter of Rights has influence on your deliberations. But what we have, in fact, is an erosion of democracy. Ordinarily, and as our country was constituted, decisions were made by elected people. Decisions that affected the population were made by the people who were chosen as the representatives of the people. Now, more and more, we have decisions imposed upon the population by some feel arbitrary decisions. We know that there's a major decision facing communities on Prince Edward Island. And those communities feel that they had very little impact on or say in how these decisions are being made. Will that lead to a more inclusive and democratic society? I think we need to think about that, but I think especially you need to think about that. Because what you conclude is going to matter for a long, long time. I would have to say I am somewhat concerned that you look too far into the future beyond your present mandate. It is fine to say, well, we have to adjust the numbers because people are moving down the road, and in 3 years, the population of community XYZ is going to be twice as big as it is now. Well, that could be true, but it may not be either. When the city of Charlottetown doesn't have enough water to actually provide all the residents a good supply, maybe its growth potential has reached a maximum. Maybe there are other ways to deal with. But I do want to say too, and I know I'll probably take more than my time, but I don't think there's a ruling on time yet in the legislature, is there, Mr. Henderson? No, I didn't think so.
It's not a it's not a filibuster, is it?
No. but
No, you could filibuster.
but I do want to say this. Your deliberations, when you get overly focused on strict population. There are a lot of issues that affect the island society, way of life, population that need to have voice. I'll use, for example, pesticides. Now, pesticides is a huge issue, a complex issue in a province that is very dependent on agriculture. Most of the people that live in the large municipalities could easily say, get rid of them, be done with them, ban them, outlaw them. We don't need them in this province. If most of the elected members come from those municipalities, the government could easily say, get rid of them, we don't want them, ban them from the province. Who will be there to speak for our primary industries if 17 out of 27 members have no attachment to the primary industries? Who will be there to speak for our fishermen? Who will be there to speak for our farmers? Who will be there to speak for our watershed groups? Who will be there to speak for community infrastructure, rural community infrastructure? We're going to need, anyone who's served in government knows very well the difficulty of reaching compromise, of working towards solutions for the benefit of all. But I can tell you this, having been elected, and I know for sure anyone else, whoever it was, your primary focus is who elected me. That is going to govern so much of your thought process. So people will, they're going to be upholding, defending, representing their constituents by being on the side of an issue that they feel is in the best interest of their constituent. Now, that particular issue may go against 90% of the landmass of Prince Edward Island, and it may make the people that live in the other 90% of the island, their life very, very difficult, but I certainly wouldn't blame an MLA from any urban area for reflecting the views of their constituent. So we'll leave that for a minute, but I only want to say as well, rural areas, while they may not be represented purely on a population basis, in the rural area, you only have so much access to government. Our municipal councils are small. They don't have the tax base or the technical capacity of the larger urban areas. Rural MLAs look after the highways in their communities. They look after they get called upon for everything, like culverts, like building permits. They become the advocate of the people in their area. And because in a great many cases, it's not by choice, I can tell you. From doing the work, it is really not by choice. But in great many cases, the people have no other advocate. They don't have a community council, or if you live outside of a municipality, that infrastructure doesn't exist. We no longer have school boards. We no longer have health boards. We are dependent on being represented by our member of the Legislative Assembly to be the face of government and to be our advocate for government.
So you're saying it's more difficult to be a representative for a rural area than an urban one?
Thank you. I don't have to say it, you know it. Yes, so it's very much, because the job is so diverse. And you don't have the infrastructure. Town council looks after, or city council looks after many of the issues that the members here have to look after. It's their responsibility. They'll be reminded by their elected all the time, it's your responsibility, that's why we put you there. Whereas in the city of Charlottetown, you say, no, that's a municipal responsibility. Policing. We could go down the whole list of community
What about in
service.
districts where they're mixed, though? You don't have that problem up here, but some places they do.
Yes, Minister Bigger has that problem.
Mixed.
She has part of Summerside in her district.
Yeah.
And so you have this mixture. So we need to ensure the voice of our primary industries is heard at the end of the day, and we need to understand the job that a member of the legislature has, and your commission is the 25% variance can work very well. The challenge you have is if you decide the 25% variance is extravagant and you can't go by it. And that's the thing that we were faced with. Prince Edward Island has no problem standing up for and justifying the fact that we have 4 members of a parliament in the Parliament of Canada with roughly 27, and a very good one right here, one who served us honorably for more than 18 years, I might add. But so we have about 30,000 electors, or 27,000 electors in each federal riding. Many ridings in Canada have over 100,000. Some, before the last addition to the House of Commons, had 200,000. We would be livid in this province if we were asked to forego our 4 members in order to justify growth in the city of Toronto. We would find that unfair. We would say it was against the Constitution. We'd say it didn't respect the uniqueness of our province. We would come up with probably all the same arguments I'm coming up with now to represent the rural area. But this is not without precedent. Northern Canada has 3 members of parliament for an area of about 75,000 people. Canada exists. Canada is okay with that. It's not like as if the country can't function. So I will conclude, but I don't think you can underscore the importance of the decision you make. If you decide a community of interest is important, that's what it'll be. If you decide it's not, again, that's what it'll be. It was pointed out that the Aboriginals in our province have no particular special status. Is that fair? Is that right? So I guess I can only conclude with Godspeed. I wish you well. And it's not easy, but it is important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't intend to say anything here. My name is Joe McGuire, but Phil brought me into the argument here. But being my vote was worth 5 times as much as anybody in Ontario's, which was true.
Yeah.
And we got that way because when we joined Confederation, when we got around to joining Confederation, we had 6 MPs in Prince Edward Island. And that number went down to 5, then it went down to 4, then it went down to 3. And that's when panic set in, because if we kept going, we might have had 1 in Prince Edward Island, 1 MP. And I think New Brunswick was in the same boat. Their population was shrinking. When we had the 6 MPs, it was based on our rep by pop. But other areas grew, we shrank. So there was a constitutional amendment then brought in circa 1913, which guaranteed that we would have the same number of MPs in PEI and New Brunswick as we had senators. So we had 4 senators. That's how we got to have 4 MPs. And we got that because we would no longer have very much influence at all in the national debates. And that is why I think the rest of Canada agreed to this. And I think maybe to support the rural perspective here, maybe we should take a bit of that into consideration also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyway, we got to go fix the streams in Richmond Bay.
Okay. Hello. Pull that mic down to, yeah.
Edith McLean, Centre Lot 16. I have to go to another meeting too. I'm going to go down the hall here and we're going to serenade you. I'm a part of the Tyne Valley Choir, and tonight is our first meeting. So I just want to state that my concern is I do not want to see rural MLAs diminished at all, because I live in an unincorporated community, so our person is our MLA, and we don't want to see that diminished. We can't diminish the rural presence on PEI in favor of the urban area. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next.
Robert Henderson. I guess I'm a resident of Freeland, but I'm also the MLA for District 25, Valerie Inverness. But my comments and presentation today is not of the Liberal Party, or it's really my experience as a candidate and as experienced as an MLA for the last 3 elections, and I've had the honor of participating in 4 election campaigns. One of the comments that I kind of want to have is that it mentions there, one of the maps there, currently that O'Leary Inverness is a minus 11.19% based on the 3,200 voters in 2015, and which is well within the variance of 25%. And I totally understand the concept of you have a legislation that you have to follow, and that there are certain ridings, and that's going to impact our riding. I fully acknowledge that. I'm going to take this on a little bit of a different version than some of the other presenters. I'm not really going to get into where a boundary should go so much, but as it tries to make an impact on, encouraging people to vote, making it easy for people to vote, making them feel a part of something as far as a riding and an association, things of that. And I think we in Prince Edward Island are very fortunate that we have the ability, a special privilege, and it's the opportunity in some cases anyway, to have actually door-to-door campaigning. I think that's something that is probably starting to fade out. I certainly have had opponents that are very much into social media and campaign that way. I've always been a pretty strong believer that it's important to face your electorate, to look people in the eye, knock on the door, sit at their kitchen table. And so we have that opportunity to do that here currently. I would try to urge the committee to not take that away. So once again, I want to talk a little bit more about that concept. So I want you to take into account the importance of door-to-door campaigning. It's something that's special in PEI and something special that smaller jurisdictions tend to have. But I want you to consider a little bit about it. There's also the Elections Act, which says how long an election campaign can be. From my experience, I really only had about 20 days of actual campaigning. I mean, I think it's 26 to 28 days an election campaign can be, but you take Sundays out. And my guess is that you probably shouldn't campaign on Sunday. That might change, but that means if you look at a normal poll, a poll would have about 10 polls within that. And so I always tried to go with the concept, not trying to give my campaign secrets here, but the idea was 2 days per poll. You try to. Mm-hmm. So the big challenge was for me, if I tried to look at a situation where I was campaigning, I tried to start around 9:30 in the morning. I'd go to about 9 o'clock at night, and you'd knock doors as solid as you could. It's pretty hard to go much later than that. I was getting people in their night dresses, pajamas at the other extreme. So you have to look at that timeline that you're looking at doing that. But in rural areas, the big factor has always been it's the distance between homes. Unfortunately, we're not as condensed. So if you take 5 minutes per house to get from one house to the next, the time you get in a lane and out of a lane, it impedes your potential to get to every house. And I know I've campaigned in 4 election campaigns, and I can, say within reason anyway that I got to every house. But I was doing it at 6 o'clock on the last day of the election campaign on a Saturday night.
Never mind the dogs.
And the dogs, that speeds it up sometimes because you got to run faster. But anyway, but I would, we'd be going to different rallies as candidates, and I'd be struggling to get to every house. And I'd be talking to some of my colleagues in urban areas, and they'd be going on the 3rd round of campaigning. I think Eva, and Philip here could probably understand that same concept. So when you have apartments, I know certainly for me when I campaigned right in O'Leary, houses are closer. I can walk from house to house, and you can kind of skip across lawns, and you get through. You don't need to be slowed down by the vehicle issue. So I think that's something that's sort of special. And I think that's something I would hope that the committee would really take into account of that. My other issue, and I'll go through some of these, is correct the poll boundaries. I don't know if that's, I'm assuming that's going to be part of your mandate. You're going to do some sort of a thing about the boundaries within each riding. Is that not part of it?
No, that's the people at Elections PEI. They do the polls.
Well, I would hope then you'd make a recommendation that they make it easy to people to vote, because one of the issues that I can think of in one particular poll in the riding of O'Leary-Inverness is the Hebron poll, and there's people in certain sections of that poll have to drive by 2 polling stations. They can see the polling station in where they would vote, but no, they can't vote there. They have to drive by 2 other polling stations to get to the actual place where they vote. Very bizarre, and what it tended to do was not only confuse people, but it also made it discouraging for people. So they'd come into one polling station and find out that you're not on this list. You have to go somewhere else. Then they go to the next one. So once again, I think it's very important to take note of that. So you can pass that on.
Yeah. Well, while we don't have anything to do with setting up the polls, we're supposed to look though at the polling divisions from the last general election.
Okay, so then my point would
we
be
can have a look at it anyway.
to maybe correct that. So one of the comments that I would say is, base maybe your poll boundaries more around where polling stations might possibly be. So, we have a number of halls all across every particular riding. So maybe try to take those. I'm not sure why you even have poll boundaries per se, but whatever the reason and rationale is, there is some simplicity to it, and where people could vote close to home. So anyway, I would just try to say, take a look at maybe where the polling stations probably could be. Most of those halls have been there for 100 years or more. So think about that.
Do you think there are too many polls?
Probably, yeah. If you, within like let's say in my case, you'd have 10 in the ride of O'Leary-Inverness. Maybe you don't need 10 polling stations because a lot of the polls were multiple polls anyway. But anyway, my point being, look at the polling stations, make it easy for people to vote. We don't need them driving too far. We want to make it fairly simple, and we want to make it, that's normally where I'd vote. So that's where you'd go. But if you take that situation in West Point, that was not the case. So there's a section of road that, my other point that I think when it comes to doing your riding boundaries is have your ridings, certainly within rural communities, be intact within reason. So I use the example of, I'll say Conway, I'll talk about Ellerslie. The poll bound or the riding boundary splits Ellerslie in half. One side of the road's in one riding, one side is in the other. I think of Conway as a real example. Conway, I think there's like 3 houses on a road that the nearest house in that pole would be probably a mile away. It makes no logical sense, and I think it sort of makes it more difficult for those particular individuals. So try to look at maybe the boundaries within a municipality. So I think of others, Bloomfield's another one, Conway, and Ellerslie. And make the riding boundaries maybe a little bit more north-south as you go. Really, in Islanders, we go east to west. Communities of interest tend to be a bit more north-south related. If I take O'Leary-Inverness on that version up there, kind of that would be close, and that's the concept. But if I look at District 23 that you have, it's an east-west riding. That makes it, I think you're not going to be as apt to get communities of interest that way. And when you are doing a poll boundary riding, or not a poll boundary, but a riding boundary, think about some of the other boundaries that are within regions. So if I look at municipal boundaries, I look at school zones, I look at watershed boundaries, fire districts, rink districts, postal codes. Do whatever you can to try to assimilate those to be comparable to other areas. Try not to split communities up as much. My other comment would be just about more polling, voting days, but maybe that's not the subject here. Just make mail-in ballots, all of those concepts. Make it easy for people to want to express their democratic right to vote. And I guess my final point that I wanted to make was, the legislation, the previous government had put legislation in on a 25% variance between rural and urban ridings. And that is simply to level the playing fields for candidates campaigning. Rural ridings, it does take more time. I think Philip Brown made those same comments. I think door-to-door campaign is an important part of the democratic process, and it does take every day to get to homes in my riding of Valeria-Inverness, and I know a campaign in Caskenpec Grand River was no different, while urban ridings get around their district 2 or 3 times. The variance was put in place for a reason, and that was to compensate rural areas for campaigning challenges, issues that MLAs particularly face, and I deal with it. My colleagues, some of them don't have to deal with any road or issues. I have to deal with those things. And then there's also the other factor, the distance that it takes to get to the legislature. For me, it's a 3-hour-a-day drive. I don't have the ability to represent my constituency as much as, say, a colleague in a more urban area closer to Charlottetown. And I think those are factors that we would put into place. So without really saying where your maps and lines should go, if I did look at the 2 versions that you had, 1.1 and 3.1, I would say 3.1 far better represents rural communities than 1.1 does. So that would be what I have to present. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson.
Hi, my name is Charlene O'Brien, and I did not come prepared with anything to speak to because I wanted to learn more about what we're doing here tonight. But I do want to follow up on some of Philip's comments and underscore the importance of representation of rural islanders. A couple of years ago, we were faced with being annexed into the town of Ellerslie. 33 communities were proposed to be taken over that way. And what we did was we fought it because it showed us nothing more than another layer of government, another layer of taxes, and the same few services that have been gradually taken away from us. I do not understand the mentality of taking votes, basically, and advocacy by taking our MLAs away from us, reducing our MLAs, and leaving us with the weak option of joining a town that has, a half a dozen councillors that are all from that town. I live out in a rural community. In the wintertime, there are about 12 residents in Lot 7. And in the summertime, that, quadruples to our summer residents who are a tax base but not a voting voice. Agriculture, fisheries, and tourism are the biggest revenue on Prince Edward Island. So once again, every time I turn around, I see the tail wagging the dog. Charlottetown and an inner city, insular group of people who actually complain about having to drive up to West Prince for anything most of the time. Maybe all of you aren't included in that group, but I drive to Charlottetown to work. And I want to live in rural Prince Edward Island for the lifestyle. And I want my vote represented well. I want to be able to call Mr. Henderson and speak to him about a new seniors project that I'm going to be involved in, and I don't want to have to speak to someone in Charlottetown that I've never met, that has no connection with rural PEI, that has no interest in anything in rural PEI. In fact, I have had people in Charlottetown say to me, where the hell is Lot 7? Is anything 100 miles away from Charlottetown? You know, so that's a mentality, and I think it needs to be thought about if you're going to be doing on this commission things that are going to be written into law. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Thomas Burley. Just kind of listen to some of the other speakers here. One of the things I want to point out is really how important it is that rural communities have a voice in Prince Edward Island. And we really need to find that balance as well between the needs of urban and rural populations. And in doing electoral reform in any sense, we need to make sure that the balance between urban issues and rural issues, that the urban population and the higher population there does not overshadow rural concerns. For example, let's say, one of the speakers had used the issues of pesticides. Well, if we have a major issue here in rural Prince Edward Island with regards to that, we need to make sure that if that's an issue we're very passionate about and very vocal about, that it's not overshadowed because of what places like, let's say, Charlottetown want. So we need to make sure that we have representation, that we have a voice in this province. Another issue as well is I want to make sure that the Commission also takes into effect how important our voices are, because I know a while back, and this is still a bit of a controversial issue, we were dealing with the school board reform and with the appointed members and such, and there's a bit of concern with regards to how much they will actually listen to the public, and I want to make sure that with this commission, since what they're going to do will be binding, that they take the voices of their electors seriously and really consider what we have to say, because that was a bit of an issue I found with the current hearings with the school review. The other thing as well is with regards to things like the plebiscite. That's kind of where my concern kind of lies as far as hearing our voices, because we did have a plebiscite a while back, and MMP did win the plebiscite, but it didn't end up happening, or there's progress slowed on that. Like, it doesn't seem to be happening anytime in the future, and I want to know, like, as well, what the Commission's going to do with regards to MMP should that become enacted.
Well, we're not going to do anything with it because it's not part of our mandate. Our mandate is just to deal with the 27 districts as they are. What may happen in the future, that's another matter.
Yeah, but it's something we also have to look at as well. What was my other point here? And basically we just have to make sure as well that, people from rural communities, we have different needs than people from urban communities. And we just have to make sure that they're properly represented and that the boundaries are fair and that we're not compromising too many MLAs from the rural areas because of just population. Because if that's the case, then people from Charlottetown could easily outvote us, no problem, on rural issues. So that's kind of the main thing, just making sure that, in this process that rural communities do have a voice. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if Ms. Bigger, you plan to address us or not.
I will.
We're just waiting to, because I'm interested to hear about mixed districts. You're the one that can tell us about that.
If no one else is
I'm going to twist it around a little there.
Well, thank you, honorable commission members. Welcome to Tyne Valley Linkletter District 23. My name is Paula Bigger. I am the MLA for District 23. I have run there and been elected 3 times since 2007. And it is a very unique and distinct district in the way that the boundaries presently are set up. The top 6 polls are in rural PEI. Also, there's another pole if you look at Linkletter. It is an agricultural area as well. Slum Park, there's 11 poles, I should also clarify. So those 7 for sure are all industry-related common interest areas in the industries of fishing and farming particularly. In the lower poles the other poles are in the boundaries basically of the city of Summerside. However, Slum Park is pole number 7. Even though it's in the city of Summerside, the responsibility for roads and maintenance fall under the province, under the present agreement that's there. So as the MLA, I still deal with a lot of those issues as well. Within the city of Summerside, and I have some of my constituents from that end of the area here this evening, and I thank everyone for coming, by the way, tonight. I still, even though there are, as Philip mentioned, things like roads and street lights and all those issues that are dealt with through municipal and the city of Summerside, I still have a connection with my constituents in regard to other issues that go beyond the responsibilities of municipal government. And so balancing that is certainly, challenging. But looking the way our boundaries are presently set up, and if I look at that, the way things are split, like Robbie said, Ellerslie is split right down the middle. If you come down the main highway, down through Northam and through Richmond, Richmond is split right down the middle between myself and Sonny Gallant. And it goes right down into Musqueam and around back of Musqueam. So the present boundaries are certainly can be construed as confusing, but our constituents work well within them, and they do have that common interest again of their community. And if I look and talk from the perspective of this region of Tyne Valley area, predominantly are affiliated with the Summerside area. In fact, I would argue that Tyne Valley area is becoming a suburb of the Summerside area, because we do have a lot, because of its closeness, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, a lot of residents, especially at the Slum Park Aerospace Center from this region, do work, a great number of them at the Slum Park area or at the tax center. So this is an area that is very much connected to the Summerside area for our shopping, for our entertainment, for our hospital services, and other related services. Even though we are in the East Prince, West Prince zone, I'll say, for some of our healthcare services, predominantly people from Tyne Valley area do go to the Summerside Hospital for their health services, as well as other services. So from a perspective of campaigning in a district, the way it is laid out, I can compare in my campaigning days, I can go to Slum Park, which has 250 homes in it, and I can do that in probably half a day, door to door, knocking on every door and having time to speak to people. And then if I'm up in this area or out in Birch Hill area, in the pole out in Birch Hill, you might get 90 homes a day there. Just to compare what it's like to campaign in rural PEI compared to, the urban area.
Never mind if it's Spring Road.
And, well, yeah, never mind that. Yeah, the Department of Transportation has the roads up in this area fixed up pretty good. But when I look at your proposal for District 24, the proposed changes,
We won't call them proposals,
okay.
but they're samples.
Samples. Okay. So in your sample that's up on the screen there now, you have District 24 coming right in to where the spa is, basically, or beyond that, right into the city of Summerside. I think it's even beyond that. And you have, yeah, I'm trying to look where it's ending. As far as streets, I think Mackenzie Drive, it goes way beyond that from what I can see. But even though that they're close in geographical area, and I heard this from my constituents when I was going door to door in some of those areas before when the discussions took place, that the commonality to their representative, and if their representative is decreed to be a representative for the French language culture, I think you may have some concerns from what I had heard before of how their concerns may be directed as non-Acadian or non-French culture. So I think you need to keep that in mind in making your decisions. Now, the map that you have up there right now, proposed for this District 23, is essentially the old, and some of you will probably remember this, the old Third Prince boundaries, really. And Eddie Clark, if he was here, would tell you the challenges of representing somebody down pretty well in Malpeque. And I can tell you there's no commonality between, other than maybe hockey, between Tyne Valley and Kensington area. And you even come around and loop into the city of Summerside, I believe, in that one. So with that one, I have some real concerns. You've essentially, taken out any communities of interest, and other than just being flipped around the North Shore there, there's no commonality of communities in that area. Other than being on the North Shore, as far as
Tell me, what do you think about the idea of separating completely urban and rural?
I have some concerns about it, obviously, and I think that's what you've done. Well, you actually haven't, because you put part of city, in this particular one, you have part of the city, one part of the city of Summerside in it, and then you go down to Sherbrooke, and then you're back into the city of Summerside. So that is very confusing, I think, for the voters and the residents in that area, essentially. But I would have preferred you to go more across and try to take in, like if you have District 25 the way it is, to try and go right across, taking in Enmore. I can tell you I was raised in Victoria West, so,
okay.
And I didn't go to O'Larry, so no offense, O'Larry. I went to Tyne Valley to get my husband, but I would, and I know like the in around Harmony, that area is more affiliated with Tyne Valley area and Richmond area than it would be. So I'm looking at going right across the province here for one solution, and because we have a variance of -8, which is 300 people. So how can we fit those other 300 people in without totally cutting up our district, to be blunt here? And I know from working with the people in Lot 16, they are not an incorporated area, Lot 16. There had been previous talks with Musqueam area, and they declined to join in with Musqueam area. But in this one, in terms of their community of affiliation, they are by no choice, I think, joined in with another area that they had chosen in the past not to be incorporated with. And so I would challenge you to redraw or look at how you can better work in those other areas to meet that variance without being such a drastic change in the district itself. I think you can still work out some of those variances, because District 22 is a variance of +8, I think, and ours was a -8. And when you look at those boundaries in around the Summerside area, we're split right down the middle of South Drive. And so, you know, you could take, leaving partially with the way the district is, you could still take in some other areas, I think, to make up that variance. But our communities of interest in the Tyne Valley area, I would say, are more Summerside. So it is a challenge to get from tip to tip, and you know, but looking at how we do our shopping and everything else, other than even our students from Grand River area attend school in Summerside and Richmond area, so those areas are from McDougall's Corner down, and from Richmond, from Harmony Road down, they also go to Summerside, Three Oaks School. So there's some, you know, consideration that I think could be taken there as well. But you know, there's the other plan that you have there, the 3.1. I don't know if you can put that up for people to look at. This is okay, 1.1. If you could put that up, it pretty well wipes out this area. I'll be blunt here. Yeah, so you know, I think that's a real challenge, the way this is particular, if you can bring it up there. And again, as a representative for First Nations, especially off reserve, it is, you know, and working with the First Nations, whether that's some consideration as well. Again, I haven't had that discussion, and I don't know if you've had that discussions with First Nations, but if we are looking at distinct societies on Prince Edward Island, our First Peoples are most distinct. And so I would think if that's a consideration. Now, there has been concerns and questions about, are we going to be totally squeezed out and have one less MLA? And I don't believe that's your mandate. Do you have authority to make that recommendation?
We start with 27, we'll end up with 27.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear on that, because I know that was some questions that I got. Are we going to be squeezed out? But essentially on this one, we are squeezed out the way it, you know, essentially squeezed right out into other areas which really don't have any commonality. So I hope you will take into consideration the fact that we are only 300 people in variance that went from the last election, and try to look at other solutions that would solve the mandate that you are given to be. So.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, these are sample maps and
Yes.
things that were drawn before we really went on the road.
Right.
So we're
Yeah, and I
hearing lots of
understand
things
that.
everywhere we go about that.
I understand that, certainly, but again, if you look going north to south, as I know Robbie mentioned that too, that the communities on the south side are much more affiliated with the Tyne Valley area than they would
On the
be.
north side, you say?
Well, north, Tyne Valley, Lennox Island is north, but if you go across
Yeah.
to Victoria West and Enmore and Harmony area, those would be more
They all
affiliated.
come in under the Tyne Valley postal code.
And they come on a lot. They were the old school district too. We had the district, 22 school districts. So if you look at that too, to bring it into account.
We're finding we got all of these different kinds of boundaries, whether they're postal codes or school districts.
Fire
or
districts.
Fire,
Yeah.
It's,
And municipal districts.
Municipal
because
districts,
as was mentioned, there's Poplar Grove, and there's Linkletter, there's Tyne Valley, there's Richmond. No, Richmond's not there. I'm trying to think of the rest, but right off the top of my head that are within Tyne Valley, Linkletter, it is Linkletter, community of Linkletter, Tyne Valley, Poplar Grove, McNeil's Mills, and I think I'm missing one, Ellerslie Biddeford, that I'm standing in, excuse me, residents. So those are all municipal boundaries within District 23 as well. So they have some factors that should play into. But as Robbie mentioned, we're split right down the middle here, which is ridiculous, and it's not your fault. But it does not make any sense the way the present boundaries in terms of the community of Ellerslie Biddeford is split right down the middle between two MLAs. And so it is very confusing, that type of.
Is that because of the road?
It was used as a boundary.
Used as a boundary, so.
But when you come in halfway of Ellerslie, then it's all one. It's only split part of the way in, and then, but then when you get up another way, it's split again. So they are used for boundaries, the roads. So I thank you very much for your time to be here this evening.
Thank you.
Thank everyone who has done a presentation or who may want to add to the discussion.
I'm just
Thank you.
wondering, Mr. Chair, if I could ask one question, please.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to share with me or with the commission where you would see the potential area for growth in this area? Because that is something that's very important for us to try to get an indication whenever we're allocating districts, especially taking into consideration the numbers.
Yep.
And for some of us, rather unfamiliar with this
I'm
area.
going to say from what I know is happening in the Lot 16 area, that is an area of growth, as well as the Tyne Valley area, certainly. And Lennox Island is, it's expanding its boundaries really across onto the East Biddeford side. Lennox Island has about 410 people there now, and they are outgrowing their community.
Yes.
And do own land on the East Biddeford area that they'll be expanding, and they do have to build more.
Yes.
From development purposes side, Tyne Valley area is certainly now has some subdivisions out in the area that have potential for people to move into, and again, Lot 16 area. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, or someone else? Lady coming?
Hi, I'm Karen Kelly. Can we
Sorry,
go
I
back?
didn't get your name, Karen.
Karen Kelly.
Kelly, yes.
Can we go back to version 1.1 of District 25? And I know you say these are just proposals.
No, we don't say that.
No, they're just samples. Sorry, they're not proposals, they're samples.
Yeah.
Somebody got a crayon
We're really
and colored the
personal
island. Here we are tonight, and we're discussing electoral boundaries. We have two different samples. Will someone explain or talk to us about where the boundaries are? For instance, in this picture, it looks like 25 comes down to Tyne Valley. Can you pull it up a little bit to the bottom of 25? That's right into Tyne Valley.
Everything is green here.
And down to Grand River. I wonder how Mr. Henderson likes that. So where does it cut off then? Up west? Is that the O'Leary Road? Is that the Bloomfield Road? It's the O'Leary Road. So you would then have O'Leary and Tyne Valley in District 25.
That riding band is very similar to the old second Prince where there was 2 members, now 4.
So then that MLA would have O'Leary and Tyne Valley. If you go back down further then to District 23, where Tyne Valley, what does Tyne Valley have then as a hub?
It's just the center of Summerside.
Yeah.
23 is now into Summerside.
23 is just the city area.
So I can see what Paula is saying in suggesting that 23 come down to the south and take in Victoria West and Harmony. It almost disappears.
But we have, sorry, with the potential of growth, which was the question that was asked, and I sit on village council in Tyne Valley, so I mean, it's not like we don't approve it.
You have to be on. We'll get you on the mic if you're going to
I'll share the mic.
share.
No, we go ahead. I'm going to be here for a while. We got all night, right?
We got out till 8:30. We have.
Maybe Storm State anyway.
No, it's storming in Charlottetown, not up this
Not
way.
up
You're in God's country, Mr. Mitchell. Sitting on village council, like we don't issue the permits. The city, the province does. By 2020, we're going to have to be issuing the permits, I think, under the new Municipal Lands Act. But the potential for growth is certainly apparent in from our perspective, from my perspective as a councillor. When you come out the end of the Northern Road to the main highway, and 5 years ago there was one house in that subdivision, there is now 6 or 7. Okay, that's just one small example. We do have someone who is presently engaged in building small portable housing, like trailer, not like mobile homes. They've set up and they're building right in Tyne Valley at a building that was acquired by them, and they're looking to build more and expand and possibly expand into some properties that maybe the village has. So, you know, there's potential there for growth. When you're driving through the communities of Birch Hill and Port Hill and all down through, you're seeing new builds, new families, young families are building. Yes, some of the older folks like myself, now we're staying put. I mean, they're taking me out of my house feet first as far as I'm concerned, because we're accommodating our house for as we get older.
They're building a new Tyne Valley Manor.
I'm not going to the manor unless my mind goes.
All right.
So there is great potential for growth in your deliberations, is all I would reinforce that, okay? Not to be interjecting on Karen's time here, but that's all, just to answer your question on that, okay? Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lorraine. Can we go back then to the other district where Tyne Valley disappears?
What do you mean disappears?
On the map?
Oh,
1.1, I think it is.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
It's the little blue spot way down there in the corner, down the bottom, that we want expanded. Yes.
So is some of the reason that Tyne Valley couldn't go south because Evangeline has it? And they need it to get their numbers? And they're getting special priority in that case?
Is that a question?
That's, I'm just wondering that.
No.
No?
No.
Then how else would District 24 ever come close to getting sufficient numbers to be its own little district?
No, it has to pick up. It can be its own for countervailing reasons.
No matter how small.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
You may want to say that the first one was kind of based on numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you have
about
them all equal
about
here.
the maps. Like we first based the first map 1.1 sort of on the numbers. Then when we finished that, we sat down, we had another go at it, and this second time we sort of based it on what we conceived at the time. Bear in mind that we hadn't had any of these meetings or discussions. What we kind of knew or thought we knew to be the kind of neighborhoods That's one is numbers and the other is neighborhoods, if I can make it that simple.
So there was no consultation with the existing MLAs in
No,
their
there wasn't any
districts to
consultation
see
with
what
anybody. It was
difficulties they
just
had,
people
or
here at the table.
okay.
Yeah.
So you were just playing Mr. Rogers in the neighborhood?
That's
right.
not
Yeah.
unlike the way the school boards arrived at what
No,
schools
I think
they
it's
would close.
important. It's important to just kind of make sure everybody truly understand. These are samples that we created because the last commission found that when they went around the province without maps of any kind, people were really confused about what the possibilities were. So we sat down with no intention of pushing on anybody either of these maps. We just said, let's go about it two different ways. Not in any way are we committed to these maps. We anticipate the final map will likely be quite different from either of these. So please don't feel like we came in here tonight with a proposal. These are not proposals in any way.
Okay.
We want to hear from you what you think these districts should look like. That would be the most useful thing that you could give us. Rather, like, we appreciate your comments about these because that helps us to glean that information. And that's how you should focus yourselves, is tell us, if these help for you to tell us what's wrong with them, that's great, because then it gives us useful information. But we did not come here to try to sell you either of these maps.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
So I can see the next
Sorry.
map then looking very different from either one of these, from what you've heard here tonight.
Possibly.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
And I invite other people up to this microphone. It's not that bad up here.
There's a couple of things I would like to add, and it's MLA Paula Bigger again. This school that we're in is the only school in the western region that's predicted to have growth in population.
Have a growth?
Growth,
Okay.
yes. And the other point I would like to make is that this region is also engaged in sponsoring 2 Syrian families to come to the area. So, with the growth expected and predicted through the school review, and with what the other predictions have been, and suggested growth areas, I would hope that would be taken into account as well.
Thank you. That's all good stuff like that for us to know.
Is there any chance you could pull up 3.1?
Name?
Yep.
Name?
Oh, is it? Okay. I was just kind
Oh,
of...
and your name, please?
My name's Thomas Burley. I was kind of looking at district number 23, and one thing I noticed was kind of around like the East Biddeford, Lennox Island area. A lot of the kids in that general area, they go to Ellerslie. A lot of them go to Hernwood, and they have more of a closer connection, I feel, to like that general Tyne Valley area. And I don't feel like when we look at places like, we're looking at, east of Summerside even, where District 23 expands to, I don't feel like the interests of the people in that particular area would kind of align more with what we might feel. I think, but when we look at around like the East Biddeford area, Lennox Island area even, like we're a lot closer there, and I think that their interests would kind of align more with what we would feel, because it feels like it is a bit of a mixed district, and there'd be a lot of like opposing viewpoints and a lot of opposing values and opinions, and within one district, and it would be hard to kind of represent all of those in a district like that, where you have both really urban and really rural, and it's kind of like Summerside would overpower areas like Tyne Valley in this sense. So I feel it would be more representative if you included areas like East Biddeford, kind of more north of District 23, as opposed to like the area stretching out almost to Kensington. That's just kind of what I observed from map 3.1 anyway, so yeah.
Take out the Summerside portion.
Yeah, or at least like reduce a large part of it.
And Kensington.
And Kensington, yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's like too far-reaching east. I think, it wouldn't really, like, what we think of here would not be the same as someone near Kensington. Like, we have a lot different opinions on stuff, a lot of different values, a lot of different issues. And, we're looking at, like, in Kensington and such too. Like it's entirely different school boards. Well, not school boards, but entirely different like high schools and stuff like this too. Whereas in the East Biddeford area, they even have the same elementary school, and a lot of the kids, a lot of the families are more closer together, and it's just, and even too, like East Biddeford and such too, it's like closer to a lot of the communities like Ellerslie, Biddeford as well, and it just seems like it would align more, in my opinion, and that the people there would kind of align more than maybe somebody in Kensington would, and perhaps like their interests would be better represented as well as a rural community too. So that's just kind of what I saw. So anyway, just kind of adding my opinion on like the maps and stuff.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Going once? Twice? I think we're adjourned. Thank you all for coming. They've been very helpful.